This is the School Success Podcast, a podcast for school leaders to learn from other school leaders what's working and what's not, and to get inspiration and encouragement, as well as strategies to grow school enrollment, connect with families, retain teachers, recruit teachers, and everything in between. You guys are heroes, and I cannot thank you enough for pouring into this next generation that's coming behind us. My goal is you will take at least one thing away from every episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Please enjoy the School Success Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation.
Time for school.
Hey, School Success Makers. Welcome to another edition of the School Success Podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Slater, and I'm joined by a friend out of the great state of Pennsylvania, Jim Carbaugh, who is the CEO of All Points Leadership. He is a TEDx speaker, and he's doing a lot of cool things. He's also just wrote a book, and we're going to be diving into the book today as well and all the things he does. He's a fun guy. If you ever get together with him or get on a call, you're most likely going to be laughing and having a good time because he is that type of a guy. But before we dive into all things podcast related today, I do want to pass it off to him to introduce himself. So Jim, welcome to the podcast today.
Hey, thanks, Mitchell. Jim Carbaugh. I've got 35 years plus experience in education. Got a passion for that arena along with leadership. And that's what prompted me to write the book. I've also done some chapters in some other books, was a co-author in the Rich Code. I'm excited to be here today. I'm hoping that I can maybe spark some good conversation with some people that can help with culture and climate in schools.
Love it. Well, before we dive into it, I start with my same question for everybody. If I was to visit where you are in Pennsylvania, which you're gonna have to tell me the city when you say this, but if I ever was to visit, what would you say, Mitchell? You need to do this and eat this to experience where I call home.
Oh, wow, man. Well, I'm in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, but you need to know that I'm only 30 minutes away from Gettysburg, so that I could give you a history lesson. I'm originally from Greencastle, which is right next door, and there's a lot of stuff that went on there. But if you were going to come here, you'd have to have shoe-fly pie. And if you've never had shoe-fly pie, that's a Dutch thing. It's fantastic. And the other thing, which probably wouldn't sit well with some people, but it's basically a big sausage. It's what they call hog maw. And hog maw is real spicy pork sausage and onions and cabbage and potatoes chopped up and put inside of a pig's stomach and then stuck in the oven and baked. And I'm telling you, it's fantastic. It's a wonderful breakfast. It's a great leftovers. Throw some eggs on top of that and the whole thing. And you don't have to, the stomach is just a casing that holds all that stuff in there. You don't have to worry about it. But I grew up on that. So, yeah, hog maw and shoe-fly pie. Got to have it.
Hog maw, that sounds like America. I just feel like when you say hog maw, I feel like that's like, is that an American? Did you say it's an American thing for that one or no?
That's also a German Dutch, I believe.
Okay.
I mean, around here it's amazing. I think it's one of those. It definitely is one of those dishes that if you tell people what it really is, they don't want it. Like I can, as a young kid, my mother made it because she grew up on a farm, but she could make it. She would just take everything and not even put it in the pig's stomach and just stick it in a casserole dish and bake it and the whole thing. And once you get older, you put it in the pig's stomach, and it's no different than a sausage. I mean, it really isn't. It's just,
That is so fun. I love hearing different foods that people grew up with or eat, and you think you've had it all, and then you're like, I have not had it all.
And I can tell you right now, people who are from Pennsylvania, there's probably some people right now going, and then there's other people going, it's one of those. There might even be some people going, what?
I mean, all the people that say that, they're probably the ones that drink bean juice every morning, where you take this bean and then you grind it up and then you cook it and roast it and then you shove hot water through it and you drink it and it's delicious. It's called coffee. Like you're like, oh man, you had no idea where I was going with that one.
No, I didn't, because I was picturing a can of kidney beans. I'm thinking, whoa, man, I don't know what you're going at. You just hog maw big time.
Yeah. We should probably dive into talking about the L.E.A.R.N methodology now, so we don't bore people too much. So tell me a little bit about let's do this. Let's talk about what is the L.E.A.R.N methodology? And then we'll talk about, of course, about your book, because I'd love to make sure we do a nice plug for that at the end so people know that where they can go and find it if that sounds like something they'd like to buy. But what is the L.E.A.R.N methodology?
Well, the L.E.A.R.N methodology, and real quick, I need to let you know that I actually learned this, or was presented to me. It was actually in my sophomore year in college. I came home and I actually spent some time with my grandfather. So that's where the book is actually based on the story of how L.E.A.R.N came about. And ultimately, I spent 5 days with him, and every day he taught me a lesson. And ironically, the L.E.A.R.N methodology was, hey, if you're going to make it in life, if you're going to be successful, if you're going to have a positive attitude, if you're going to have a good mindset, if you learn every day, you'll be all right. Well, he taught me that I need to listen. That was Monday. Tuesday was you need to have ethics and standards and values. And on Wednesday, it was, hey, you got to have an attitude, but it's got to be positive, right? I mean, positive attitude will get you through, whether it's a bad thing happens or not. And then on Thursday, it was respect. And then the big finale on Friday was the big word no, which we all deal with on a constant basis, and how to deal with no, and why no is not a stopping point in your life. It's actually a guardrail. And as he said to me, you're going to be where you are today because of the last no you got. And I was like, wow, you're right. I mean, that's, you get a no, it sends you off in a different direction. So the L.E.A.R.N methodology is real simple. It's listen, ethics, attitude, respect, and no. And you need to know those. So when I had my middle school in my classroom, all these rules and expectations, I just told the kids every day, I want you to learn. I need you to listen at all times to the people in the room, me, everything. We talked about what that was. Ethics, do the right thing. Attitude, be positive. Respect everyone and everything. And no, own it, get over it, let's move on. So that was the L.E.A.R.N methodology that I used in the classroom as my expectations. And then I went on and I became a principal. That became my expectations and my climate in my building.
So is that something that you said your dad or your grandfather?
My grandfather.
Was that something he learned from? Is this a thing that's been around for years and years that's well known, or this is something he created?
I think this, well, I know, I shouldn't say I think, because, if I give you the background of my grandfather, he grew up in the Depression, right? Only got to the 8th grade. Went into the military, he went down to Panama, got malaria, came out of the military. He ended up being an entrepreneur. Later on in life, he became an engineer for a major refrigeration company as an installation engineer. And he was a machinist, and he reconditioned and rebuilt and made specific parts for antique steam engines, and even companies in the area that would say, hey, we only need 200 of these bolts. So can instead of us retooling our whole factory, can you make them? So, I mean, his workshop was, beyond, I don't want anybody to think it was like, the table saw and a drill. We had metal lathes. He actually had a sand in there where he could cast parts and the whole thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's as he shared it with me. It's basically what he said to me. He says, "This is what I've figured out in life, and I've made it because I've learned to listen. I've always had a standard in ethics, right and wrong. I've always tried to maintain a positive attitude when things happen." And he talked about respect. And the big thing with respect, Mitchell, was treat people the way they want to be treated, which means you got to get to know them. He kind of went above and beyond the golden rule, which is, treat people the way we want to be treated. And I'll tell you, that was like a major light bulb for me when I started to teach and when I started to coach, to realize that when I'm with kids, if I'm coaching kids, I coach football and track. Not every kid gets motivated the same way I did when I was an athlete. But if I motivate somebody the way I get motivated, I'm missing some of those kids. Some of those kids, you can actually turn off and work negatively. So I got to get to know what their button is, as a coach. And and the thing is, even as a teacher in the classroom, I need to, you can group those kids. I got to figure out what those kids are about and what really makes Johnny happy and Sally not happy and those kind of things. So, that became big. And then obviously the no. So no, it's, to my knowledge, Pap never learned it from anybody other than himself. It's something he figured out. He was in his late 60s when I went through this, and it was basically his life lesson to me. Like, this is what's gotten me through. It took him time to figure it out. And if you just, his thing was, if you just listen in life, and a lot of it was listen to yourself, right? We talk to ourselves more than we talk to anybody. So talk positive, but your ethics, and that was a big one too. Like, he told me, you got to figure out, what are your non-negotiables? And you can't make a big list. And people would do that. If I ask people, when I sit down with schools or students, and I'll say, hey, list your values, they'll list 10 of them. List your, well, now narrow it down to the top 3 or 4. What are ones that, like, no matter what, this is, positive attitude's easy. So yeah, it's a PAP original. And when I first started teaching, it kind of goes off on my TED talk. When I started teaching, everybody was, oh, you got to have all these rules and everything. And I just looked at kids' eyeballs. They were just looking at me like, oh my gosh, I'm in another class. This guy's going to tell me I got to raise my hand. Don't go to the pencil sharpener unless you ask for permission. Did it. And I thought, what is it I want kids to do? And then all of a sudden it clicked. I just want them to learn. I just want you to listen up. I want you to respect everybody, attitude, ethics. And then if I say no or whatever, it's understand it's not the end. But, the big thing about no is it doesn't mean you can't do it. You just can't do it today. You can't do it with the person, whatever it might be.
So for the teachers that are listening and the school leaders, even head of schools that are listening going, okay, Jim, I love this. I want to do this, but I got 30 kids in my class. I'm supposed to know all 30 of them. And each of them connects in a different way with the way that I get to them. Like, what is the, obviously you were an educator, I feel like you even still are, because you're obviously teaching us and you're teaching everybody you're around, but how can they effectively do this without burning themselves out? If everyone does have a different way of learning, which is obviously very true. Everybody has a different way. I know I connect with things better, like in a different way than my wife does or my son does. So what is a way maybe to encourage the teachers or head of schools, if they're, again, talking about 30 students in their class, or if the head of school is trying to get his staff to get excited about something, he has 20, 30, 40 staff to encourage for something. What are some ways we can do that?
Wow, that's a fantastic question, because that is a tough task. And I think let's face it, we can categorize our students into categories. The kids who like all the attention, the kids, the kid who doesn't say a whole lot, so that was always my first take, is I need to put those kids. But the big thing for me, and this may or may not answer your question, and I don't want to. The big thing for me as a teacher and as an as administrator, what I did is we really pushed it. Look, we need to listen to each other, right? Now, when we did the ethics and we did the values, as a classroom, we decide what our values are and what are our top 3 or 4 non-negotiables, and we post them. We say this is it. Right. So everybody's got a different learning style in there. And even though there's 30 kids, or like me, I taught science and I was at the middle school level, at the high school level, well, I'd have 130 kids. I could still pocket them into, here, these people over here, they love having worksheets, and that's just how they're going to learn. And I'm not a worksheet guy, so I'm struggling with that. These guys like notes. I'm not a note guy. I'm struggling with that. So I had to find some way to spark that way of that they like to learn, and actually get them to take responsibility for how they learn and what they learn. And that's, to get into that. But we pick those ethics. And then, of course, we talk about the positive attitude and being able to ask questions. And that's the big part of no, is if you get a no, or if something's not clicking, no, this isn't working for me, you have to be comfortable in class as the educator and other kids. You have to make them comfortable, realize that it's okay to ask a question, why? Because if I'm going to give a no to somebody, or something isn't clicking, I should have a reason. It shouldn't just be because I said so. Mm-hmm. Right? There's got to be a reason. And then, of course, the respect was, I'm going to respect the way you learn. You respect the way I teach. And if I'm not collecting, I need to be able to ask those questions to kids. What is it you need from me to make this click? Now, the other thing that I did as an educator is I would recognize kids in the classroom who were great. I printed out certificates, and every marking period I'd have a little celebration, and I'd say, hey, here, and here's the key. So if I had 120 kids, I never had 30 kids. I had 30 kids in the class, but if I had 120 kids, I would divide it by 5, and everybody's going to get a certificate. Some are going to get a listen certificate. Some are going to get an ethics certificate. Some are going to get an attitude. Some are going to get a respect, and some are going to get a no. Right. And that no certificate means that they understand no, and they're the person to see if you're feeling dejected, because they know how to get over it. And over here's Jim. He really knows how to respect people. So, watch him. But you recognize those kids because we always recognize the kids who score well. Here's Jim. He got 100%. So I did the same thing as an educator then, as an administrator. You probably noticed my shirt is I had different colored shirts. And we would hand them out. And the goal was, we had 600 kids in our middle school. The goal was, at the end of a year, I wanted to have 2/3 of the kids have a t-shirt, minimum. And then we'd have a Learn Day where they all wore their t-shirts, and we'd give away free ice cream at the cafeteria, do whatever. And then we'd take them out to the stadium and we'd get a picture. And that would get posted that year. And then the next year we posted. Next year we posted. And it was ironic to see a 6th grader who got a shirt, and by the time they were an 8th grader, they'd say, well, what shirt can I wear? You can wear either one you want. But all of a sudden you get to the time when they're in 8th grade, all of a sudden you got these kids wearing shirts. All of a sudden you almost have the entire school. And it's that thing where we're going to create that positive climate, and you start having kids go, what do I got to do to get a shirt? It's a simple t-shirt. And it's hard for me to describe it. We spend, as educators and as administrators, we will spend 90% of our time worrying about 10% of the population that's not quite clicking in. Well, I actually did some statistics when I was an administrator, and I watched our referrals go down. We were sitting at about 13-14% of our kids were getting referrals. That we got ourselves down to about 6, because you had more and more people wanting, well, how do I get a L.E.A.R.N shirt? Well, you just got to pick one of these 5 characteristics, and you got to do it. You got to display it. And if you're listening, you're probably not going to. It's funny. You could say that to kids in class, and even in school, obviously, if kids came down to the office. But in class, I could look at a kid. If class was kind of getting a little rambunctious, I'd say, hey guys, what part of L.E.A.R.N do we need to improve right now? And it was up on the board. I mean, it was up there listed, and they would say, we got to listen better, or we need to respect. Or I could look at a kid. I could have said, hey, Mitchell, what part of L.E.A.R.N didn't you do real well in class today? I didn't respect. And that would be a question I'd ask kids when they come down the office. Before they'd see the assistant principal, I'd say, hey, what part of L.E.A.R.N are we going to be talking about today? Attitude. And you've made the turn when you start to get teachers who, when they write a referral, write something, or type an email to the assistant principal, and they're saying, hey, you need to have a conversation with Jim because he's just not getting the R in L.E.A.R.N. And it's got to be a commitment. But it's I would say this to you, and I don't know there's an extra secret to go back to your original question. I don't think there's a secret. You still have to get to know each one of those kids, and we should. But we can pocket them into groups, how they learn and what's the best way to learn it. And we do that. I did that as a teacher, because then that's how you made your groups. You made sure you had a kid that really connected well and liked to write and listened real well. You get them in the group. Somebody who maybe is really mechanical and really got it together when it came to science. I'm putting them, I'm going to have them in that group too. I'm not going to put all the kids who can do all the stuff with their hands and very tactile in one group, because then that group's going to take care of the lab, and the rest of them are going to sit around going, what am I doing? And I'm going to spend all my time there. So you try to, you kind of boom, you mark that off. And you adjust that as it goes, because I think kids adjust and they shift. I was lucky enough to teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. For about 3 years, we had a group where the way they rearranged it, we taught 6th graders, then I had them again as 7th graders, and I had them again 8th graders. It was really kind of a learning experience for me to see those kids change. Because you could look at a kid in 8th grade and go, man, you weren't like that in 6th grade. Yeah. But you could watch them mature,
Is this something you recommend that the teachers communicate with the families, that this is what you're doing inside the school too? Like, hey, we're tracking this and we're giving out shirts, and this is how they get them, so they know what's happening?
Absolutely. It was funny. When I took over as principal at the school I was at, right in the handbook, of course, our handbook, everybody has their handbook, and you have the, 48 pages of can't do this, can't do that, and everything. But right in the front, when they opened it up, I said, we're a L.E.A.R.N school, and it had the word L.E.A.R.N, going down into listen, ethics, attitude, respect, no. And then on the back, throughout the year, we're going to celebrate that. kids go home and tell your parents you got a L.E.A.R.N shirt today, and tell them you got the red one. It stands for attitude. And on the back, there's a saying. On the back here, it says attitude, and then it says the difference between a good day and a bad day. The respect on the back, it says treating people the way they want to be treated.
I like that.
Yeah, so it's a matter of just trying to spread the good word, and I'll be honest with you. I mean, it was easier in the classroom because you had a smaller captive audience. In the school, obviously as an administrator, I got to get the teachers to buy into it. They got to see the positive. It's funny when we had the book launch. The current principal of the building I'm in was my assistant, and then he was at the book launch. And then as soon as it was over, he texted me and says, "I can still see you doing the parents' night and the opening student thing." And it was funny because I would just walk in the room and I'd say, "Okay, guys, everybody's got a job." And I'd talk about all the jobs. Teachers got to do this. I got to do this. You got to do that. You got one job this year. You need to learn. You need to listen. You need to have ethics, do the right thing, have an attitude, be positive. You need to respect everyone at all times, treat them the way they want to be treated. And you need to understand, no, own it, move on. Let's get things done.
Hey, I just want to take a really quick break from the podcast to highlight one of our amazing partners and sponsors, ClassReach. If you're a new school administrator or founder and are struggling to keep up with all the hassles of planting a new school, like collecting tuition, communicating with parents, or handling student data, then you need ClassReach. ClassReach is the all-in-one software that helps with everything from admissions and tuition to classroom management and parent communications. Sign up for a free consultation with one of their school specialists and see how ClassReach can help your school grow today. You guys can check them out online, classreach.com. They are a kingdom-minded company, and I love their leadership team there. I've become friends with a lot of them. They truly are a great company. I support them, and I love them, and you guys will love them too. Check them out, classreach.com. Now, back to the show. And what I like about this is it's something you can follow. Like, I'm sure everybody listening is like, well, yeah, I want to do that. It makes sense. I feel like I try and naturally do that on my own, but then there's no way to follow it. So kids are like, well, I know I'm supposed to learn and listen. I know I'm supposed to, but having something to actually go back to and say, hey, this is printed on something, like they can go, this is something you're also saying you're serious about it too, instead of, oh, we know we're supposed to, respect people. But if you see it printed on and a person's wearing a shirt with it, it's like, well, they are taking this very seriously. It's something that's obviously going to help them in the future years as adulthood and everything. So I love that there's a serious component of it that you're branding it around.
Yeah, there were posters all throughout the school. I had one. I printed them up as the principal and put them in every classroom. And I did a morning announcements, and I'd always say, hey, remember today we got to do one thing. We just got to learn. And as we got going, he would say, hey guys, we're going to start the school year. What I'd like you to do before the end of the first semester, make sure you take a day and talk about listening in your classroom. And then we got down to the point where, guess what? We're going to Monday. Let's talk about today's Monday. We're going to do listen. Tuesday we're going to do ethics, values, and we'd read something about what values are. And I'd always give them that. When it came to values, I'd always say, if you want to know if you're doing the right thing or not, would you do it if nobody was looking?
Yeah. So for those that are listening, if they're like, I love this, I want to try it, or I want to do it with my school. But obviously that could be a lot to, like, let's say it's a head of school listening and they want to make all the teachers do this, inside their classroom, or they just want to do it for their teachers and their staff first. Like, what is maybe the next first step? Because I feel like you could easily overcommit yourself as a head of school or a teacher going, I'm going to do this. And then you don't maybe roll it out really well, or you're not consistent with it. And then you go, forget it. I'm not going to do it at all, but you half did it. So what are maybe some first steps somebody can do to kind of put this in place to roll it out to their school?
Call me. I know, sir. I'd love to come and introduce it to everybody, but yeah, that's the first step would be to really, I could say this, and it's not a plug, but read the book and understand what it's about. But so you also know, on my website, I actually have what's called the master plan. It's a free guide that goes with the book, and it's basically a mastermind that each day you talk about. There's activities to do with listening. There's activities to do with ethics. There's activities to do with attitude and respect and know. And it's the one that's online for free right now is the one that's for like your adults, your group, your team. But I've also have it for, I've created activities with the help of of elementary kids, and then for middle school kids, and then for high school kids. Elementary school kids, for listening, reading a story and talk about it. For ethics, it's certain stories and maybe pull out what were good things and bad things that they did, and then attitude stuff and everything. So yeah, I mean, I think, the easiest way is to me was, as I presented it to the faculty years ago, was number one. I mean, maybe I had my street cred in the fact that I taught for 18 years, and this is what I used. When we had parents' night, when I was a teacher, we had parents' night, I'd say, guys, because there were teachers, and we all know that, and there's nothing wrong with that. They'd hand out their syllabus, and we had to do that. But they'd hand out their rules and their expectations. You're going to see this come home. I want Johnny to sign it because he's committing to it and all stuff. I handed out and said, guys, this is what I want your kids to do. There's all kinds of rules for the school, but I want your kids to learn every day. And when you hear from me, you're going to hear from me about your son, your daughter, because they didn't do something when it came down to learn. They didn't listen. They didn't ethics. They didn't have the attitude. And you think about it, those are the things you're talking about with a parent anyway, right? When you're calling and say, well, he's just not paying attention, well, you're talking about him not listening. Or he's always poking at somebody. Well, he's not respecting somebody. I need him to step up and be a part of that learn. And I'm going to create that atmosphere, and I'm going to hold everybody. The thing I always liked about it is it's 5 things, and I'm going to hold everybody accountable for it. Because we all know, and I experienced this, we all know this, especially as assistant principal. You all know that when you create all these rules, someone's trying to, it happens in society, right? We're trying to find that gap. Well, that's not what it says in the rule book. It says if your sneakers or whatever, right? Dress code's always the big one, right? It doesn't say, it says holes have to be, below the knee. Well, they're right at the knee. It's no. See, we're going to talk about respect and values. And I only ever did it one time, as I showed up to a student meeting dressed the way they do, with ripped up jeans and the whole thing, and just said, how does this make you feel? Do you think you respect me for this? I mean, it may not change your attitude about what you're wearing. Just understand that what you present is what people see.
Man, and that's good. And that's why also I love that it is set in stone to go back to. If you're talking to the families, if they say, oh, well, I feel like it's easier to argue back if there's not something that you're like, hey, this is what we are as a school. This is what we're following. This is what we're doing. So I love that you can go back to it and say, well, this is what I don't know if they sign off on something, agreeing to at the end of the year. Like, this is but this is just who we are as a school. I love that you're pushing that. I was playing with my son earlier today. I love wrestling, and the whole 5-year-old, fighting stuff. It's super fun. So we did something. He goes, hey Dad, if I get off of we have this little jungle gym in the backyard. He was like, whoever gets off the jungle gym first wins. And I was like, okay. And so he said, ready, go. And I grabbed him and I held him down, and then I stood up and got up first. And he looked at me and he goes, you cheated. That's not fair. And I said, you didn't give me any rules. There was no rules. And he's like, okay, Dad, the rules are you can't grab me and hold me down. And so, he didn't give me the rules. And then of course I lost after that. But it's like, we need rules. We need things to stay inside a box to know these are the correct things to be acceptable, that we're going to be playing within the box of it, I guess, that the school is setting. So that's why I really like the methodology of something that you can say, that's where I'm attaining to go to. I want to go to that.
Well, the nice thing is even with students, and that's where I try to, again, here's the thing that always bothered me about discipline. You can discipline a kid, but has he learned from what let's face it, we can throw kids, we can give them a referral, make them stay after school, we can put them in ISS, and that's a whole other conversation, Mitchell, by the way. I got rid of ISS. And I did, but it actually became TLC, the Temporary Learning Center. So that it didn't have that negative we're in jail thing, but it also, guess what? You're not going in there to just stare at a packet of information. You're going to learn today. And it helped us meet criteria for IEPs and all that stuff for gifted kids and learning support kids. So it was one of those things that it didn't work against us. It wasn't like all the kid was, because that counts against suspensions and all that stuff. That's that kind of a bird walk there. But the thing that's nice about it is you create that conversation with a kid, because when they sit down with you as an assistant principal, or even as a principal, because I would meet with the kids, and even as a teacher, when you could say, hey, Mitchell, I need to see you after class. Hey, I'm really working hard here, and I want this to be a learn atmosphere. What part of learn, do we need to improve here? What aren't you getting about listen, ethics, attitude, respect? No. Where do you need help? Or the kid's going to tell you flat out, like I told you, I walk by, hey, what part of learn are you going to be talking about today? Well, see, they're taking ownership. Well, attitude. I mean, it zeroes in. It's 5 things they can figure out that they're not doing right. Yep. As opposed to, well, it's Rule 5, Code 5, Section D. Those are still there, and they're important. And you can always bring it back to that with the parents. Hey, look, your kid didn't listen real well, and unfortunately, in our school code, here's where they're at. And then the great part is it's kind of like, well, and now I'm kind of in a pickle, and I have to put him in TLC right now because he wasn't listening, and it caused this disturbance in the hallway, and kid got hit in the head with a locker, whatever. And we're going to deal with it. It's not a big deal, but we need him to get better at learning. And you think about it, I want you, what is learning? We don't ever talk about it. And I want the kid to learn, let's face it, 50% of what we do in class is we're teaching kids to interact and what they need to do. The other 50% is the curriculum and what they do. If we don't build that relationship, we don't create that atmosphere, there's no learning going on anyway. If I'm not listening, I'm not learning. If I have bad ethics or bad attitude, I'm not. Anytime, name one time you've ever had a bad attitude about something and you actually listened or paid attention to what the heck was going on. If you don't like a movie or a TV show, it's like, I'm out of here. If somebody makes you angry, you're not. That's why they tell you to walk away, right? I mean, if you're angry, you're not listening to anybody. And if you don't respect somebody, you might be hearing them, but you're not. It's not going in. You're not going to take it, right?
Yep. I mean, we have a 5-year-old, and so anytime he gets having a hard time, there's a point where you're like, there's no reasoning involved. You can't reason anymore, and so you kind of just have to. Everybody has to calm down. I know it's the same thing with even adults. You just get to a point where you're like, this isn't going anywhere. Like let's regroup and talk tomorrow, or regroup and talk later once everybody calms down, because people are like not making sense anymore, and you're like, all right, let's pick it up.
Yeah, you when you get the emotions involved, that all. And again, you look at no. I mean, if I say no, Mitchell, and I go, hey, would you like to know why? You might go, well, yeah. Or better yet, what if you go, well, Jim, I'd like to know why. Well, let me explain. And yep. That's really put me to the test. I mean, you talk about your 5-year-old. I got a 5-year-old granddaughter, and, I'll say, no, you can't do that. And she'll go, why? I go, and it's so funny. Truth's true. My wife made the comment the other day. She said, Jim, I can't believe every time you and I you always have a conversation with her. I said, well, that's what we need to do. I can't just say no because I'm the big guy in the room. There's got to be a reason. No, you're not going to do that because you're going to roll down the hill and, you're going to hurt yourself. Or don't do that to the dog because it's going to end up biting you. I mean,
yeah, this sounds very familiar. That conversation I had this morning, because he goes, we do not ever have sugary cereal in the house. Like we just don't have it because obviously it's not good for you. And so my wife had bought Fruity Pebbles the other day. And so we're like, yes, like a dessert for us, like Fruity Pebbles. We saw it. He goes, what's that? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to let you have some Fruity Pebbles. And so he loves it, of course, because he's never had sugary cereal, And so he asked this morning, he goes, Dad, can I have some Fruity Pebbles? And I said, no, buddy. He goes, what? Why, Dad? Why? And I told him, buddy, it's not good for you. And he goes, but why do you and mommy get to have this? And I was like, oh my goodness, So then he literally comes back with his money and he goes, well, I'm going to buy some with my own money then. I'm going to buy some of my own. And I was like, buddy, I said, I love that you want to buy it with your own money, but I said, I'm still not going to let you do it because it's not good for you. He is a quick little kid. I love him to death. So yeah, you go, yeah. Hey, no, you can't, but here's why. Like, it's not good.
Yeah, for you. Yeah. I mean, and by the way, Fruity Pebbles mixed into vanilla ice cream is the ultimate. And I don't do Mountain Dew anymore, but I used to love to take Rice Krispies and Mountain Dew. Talk about snap, crackle, pop.
Oh my goodness!
That was college time. That was college time.
Wasn't yesterday.
No. I've gotten off of that stuff. That's But yeah, I mean that's. We get hung up in all the minutia and everything, and I think that's what clicked with me way back when I was started teaching. And again, everybody was like, "Oh, you're gonna have all these rules. and it's funny as you go through teaching and as you go through, I mean, and it's not meant to be anything, but I can remember kids going, "Oh, did you go to Mrs. So-and-so's room and sign her Constitution?" Because, there are teachers that would take 3 days going over their rules and expectations in the classroom. It's like, come on. I mean, you can't, and it really came to head to me when I was an assistant principal, because at the end of every year, I'd say, "Hey guys, if there's anything you'd like to see improve next year, let me know." And ironically, the only thing I'd get from teachers would be this, like, you need to add this to the student handbook. And you know what it usually was? It was the stuff that they had to deal with that year that they felt didn't get addressed. And you probably know this, Mitchell. I mean, and probably 80% of it was always dress code. And that's, when I sit down and talk with assistant principals, I always say, "Well, what's the first thing about it?" Like, "Oh man, dress code." I mean, that's just, they've been talking about dress code since Des Moines, whatever it was, way back in Des Moines, where they wanted to not let the kids wear blue jeans that were rolled up in white T-shirts. It was a change in society. I mean, it just,
so obviously a lot we can learn, a lot we can do. Yeah. And I before we hop off today, I would love for you to make sure, how can people get in contact with you through your website, and of course find your book online?
Yeah, well, just go to jimcarbaugh.com. And there's places there. Obviously, you could reach out to me. My email is easy. It's carbaughjm@gmail.com. The book is out on Amazon. We launched and we were #1. I don't know how long that lasted, because I think that's part of a book launch, and that's good. I have gotten a lot of real positive emails from people, and there's some neat people that I obviously gave it out to prior to being published, and asked them if they would read through it and give me their feedback. And I actually had a school counselor, a librarian, actually ex-administrator, and then also had a comic book, Billy Tucci, who does the She comics and stuff, and he's well known. I actually got to meet him years ago and reached out to him, and he's like, "Yeah, let me look at your book." And he come back with a great little review to that. So yeah, I mean, go out to Amazon, look up The Shop Secret, learn what Pat knew. And I always would say to people, it's funny, we need to make sure that we listen to everybody. And I always tell the kids, don't be afraid to listen to I know sometimes you sit around and your grandpa's telling you stories, your grandmother or aunt, uncle, and you kind of, understand that, there was my grandfather, again, who only had an 8th grade education, but I mean, what a wealth of wisdom. And I can honestly tell you that after I spent that week with him, I was actually contemplating moving back home. I went to school in Nebraska. And, just one of those things, you're in that point, you were sophomore year, right? So people make all those decisions, usually the freshman, sophomore year. And having mulled that over all summer, the whole L.E.A.R.N thing, you know what? I'm going to go back. I'm going to finish this stuff up, and I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm not going to transfer and lose a half a year or a year. And it worked out great. I mean, but yeah, I mean, obviously I am a flag carrying L.E.A.R.N guy. I got T-shirts. Because I truly believe if you buy into it, and it's not really a buy-in, if you just realize that it makes a difference. And I'm starting to I actually just worked with 2 companies that they've turned their teams. They had me come in and do their teams, make them L.E.A.R.N teams. Because you think about it, within a company, are we listening to each other? And do we share the same values? And if we do, why aren't we listening to each other? And what's our attitude when we sit down in a meeting? We talked about it, right? If I got a bad attitude in a meeting, well, I'm not listening. Do I respect everybody, right? And then I may have a good idea, but if I'm given a no, I need to know why I got a no. And is there something, then that lets me go back and, okay, do I got to make some changes? And one of the things I'll say this, I got to throw this is a nugget I throw out to everybody. But one of the things when I worked with this company, they said, well, we all listen. I said, well, do you? I said, because here's the deal. When you're sitting around the table and you're having a conversation, if you have an idea or a comment to somebody's comment or idea, you need to be able to repeat part of it back to the group before you add you need to be able to say, hey, you know what? I really like the way Mitchell talked about what we should do for Christmas, before Christmas break and the celebration, but I'd like to add, maybe we could do this. It acknowledges the fact that I did hear what you said. I'm not just trying to trump you or I've been sitting there. What's the old thing, right? Don't listen just to respond. Listen to understand, right? So if I'm just sitting there waiting for my turn, I didn't hear anything anybody said.
Hey, school success makers, Mitchell here. I just want to take a really quick break from the show to give a big, huge shout out to the Herzog Foundation. I absolutely love the Herzog Foundation. I've been friends and partners with them for a couple years now, but we're bringing it to a whole new level. And I'm excited to share that our very own School Success podcast is now featured on the Herzog Foundation Podcast Network. The Herzog Foundation is a powerhouse of resources designed to support schools like yours, from free training events through the Herzog Foundation Institute to their incredible online news publication, The Lion, and of course, our new podcast, Home. They have everything you need to stay informed and inspired. And if you're dreaming of starting your own Christian school or co-op, don't miss their online course, Schoolbox. It's a fantastic resource to help you get started on the right foot. At School Success, we're proud to partner with the Herzog Foundation to bring you these valuable tools and insights. So visit herzogfoundation.com to explore all they have to offer. Trust me, you won't want to miss out on these amazing opportunities for growth and success. And I love all the people over there, and I know you guys will too. So please go check them out, and you won't be disappointed. Now, back to the show. That's so good.
Yeah.
Man, I feel like, Jim, that you're going to answer my next question. That could have been the answer to my next question.
Okay.
I always end the podcast with the same question for everybody, which is, if you were to share a piece of advice with all the school leaders listening, what would that one piece of advice be? I feel like that's solid, but do you have any others you'd add to that?
I don't know that I can add to that. I do think that you need to, we always say it. I always would tell people, I told the teacher when I first introduced this, I said, look, I did this for 18 years. We need to make, I'm not devaluing anything when it comes to school board policy. I'm not devaluing our handbook, but we need to KISS. We need to keep it simple, right? Mm-hmm. And we need kids to understand that we want them to learn. We're putting them on a mission. They have a job, and it is to learn. But we then have to define, what is that? What does that look like? And that would be the things that I would always say I would say to every school leader or a teacher. Whenever you put an expectation out there, you need to be able to express and explain and show, what does that look like? Because if we don't show people what that looks like, if we can't show what listening is, if we can't show what the values are, because if someone says, well, what's respect? Well, I need to know what it looks like. Because otherwise I bring it up in my mind, and my respect may not line with your respect. That's why those little caveats, right? Treat people the way they want to, that kind of thing.
100%.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Jim, thank you for taking time out of your day to hop on and talk about the L.E.A.R.N methodology, the shop secret. Congrats on your book launch.
Thank you.
And thank you for hopping on. I love what you're doing. I love your attitude and your smile. You're fun to talk to and hang out. We could do this for probably 2 hours easily on a podcast. So,
well, we haven't talked about football yet. So
I know that's how dangerous it is. There's not much to talk about for the Bears this year. We're pretty awful, but maybe next year.
Yeah,
so
I've heard some rumors.
Yeah, me too. But wishing you nothing but the best, man. And thank you so much for your friendship, and looking forward to seeing what happens with your book in the coming years.
Yeah, I'm here to help, man. Whatever we need to do. Let's get kids out there and let's get them learning, and we can change this. We really can. It's not hard.
Love it. Thanks, Jim.
You bet.
Well, another huge shout out and a thank you to Jim for taking time and being on the podcast today. I love what he's doing with the L.E.A.R.N methodology, and I'm wishing him nothing but the best as he continues to, of course, write more books, as he's mentioned to me, and push out this to more schools and school leaders so they can learn this and bring it into their schools. You guys know this. Every week, I'm just hoping you learn at least one thing that you can take back to your schools to make it better than it is right now. And I'm hoping you were able to do that today. Before you go, of course, I want to highlight our 3 free resources we want to make sure you guys are aware of. And the first one, of course, is what you're listening to right now. It is the podcast. Weekly episodes dropping every Monday. So make sure you are subscribed and tuning in to get those episodes every single week. And if you haven't, we'd love a 5-star review if you're loving the content that we're putting out. That would be really, really appreciated. The second one is on our website, schoolsuccessmakers.com. In the top right-hand corner, there is a way to subscribe to the School Success Report, which is our weekly email that goes out with different just resources, different blogs the team has written, and we highlight a different podcast episode and some different educators inside of there. We want to make sure you guys are not missing out on that. So sign up for that, schoolsuccessmakers.com. In the top right-hand corner, School Success Report. And last but not least, on Facebook, we have our free private community called School Success Makers. We want to make sure you guys are in there and around other educators and community, because community is awesome and important. So make sure you're in there. I'm personally in there and would love to see you there as well. Whew. All right. I think that's it, guys. So I hope your week is awesome. I hope you tune back in next week with another amazing guest as usual on the School Success Podcast. We'll see you then. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Herzog Foundation.